Hey guys, my bag of books to get rid of is starting to overflow now, so I figure it's time for an unhaul. Oh god. It's probably not the best bag for that. Alright, just gonna dive right in, talk about the books I'm getting rid of and why, and yeah. So, starting off with The Shadow of What Was Lost by James Islington. I not like recently bought this, but I think within the last year. I didn't notice that it has some like coffee staining on the spine, which I don't love. But I've also heard this book is very just meh, and like the series is just kind of meh. So I have so many other series to read right now, and I just know I'm not gonna get to this one anytime soon, if ever. So I'm gonna let this one go. I got it pre-owned, so it's not like the biggest heartbreak in the world. It's fine. If you did love this book though, let me know. Maybe I'll pick it up from the library at some point, but for now, I'm just not interested. Next up, we have Lake's Edge, which has the gothic romance cover of my dreams. This one does kind of hurt because I was really excited about this when it came out. I picked it up like right away and read it immediately because it was very much like fall vibes. I wanted to love this so much more than I did. And when I saw that the sequel was coming out this year and I wasn't excited to read it or like not really interested in reading it, I knew it was time to let this go. This is a YA gothic romance where the love interest is sort of monstrous, but like it's not really his fault, so he's not really monstrous. I don't know. There's like a cursed lake and magic powers. This definitely has an audience. I just think I'm maybe a little too old for it at the moment. And yeah, I'm letting this one go. Next up, I have a couple romances that I'm ready to get rid of. First up being the Bellinger Sisters duology by Tessa Bailey, starting with It Happened One Summer and then Hook, Line, and Sinker. It Happened One Summer was fun, but I did have my issues with it. If I were to write that story, I would have done it a lot differently, like that kind of thing. And Hook, Line, and Sinker just wasn't what I wanted it to be and fell really flat for me. Like, while I had my issues with this one, it was at least like fun and full of joy, where like this one was not. It was kind of a bummer. So I'm not super attached to these. Tessa Bailey is really hit or miss for me, and I was excited by like the Schitt's Creek sort of inspiration that she had going into this. And I do think like they're fun. I just don't need them on my shelf anymore. Next up, we have The Hating Game by Sally Thorne. This is incredibly popular. This is like the sort of start of the enemies to lovers office romance trend that has happened in the last few years. And it's fine. I had a fun time like while I was reading it. It was a fast-paced book, but like it hasn't really stuck with me. And I don't see myself rereading it. Then we have The X Talk by Rachel Lynn Solomon. This was fun and I enjoyed it in the moment. But like my favorite thing about it was the fact that it was like public radio, and like the romance itself didn't do a whole lot for me. This is an enemies to lovers fake dating kind of situation in which these two people who work for sort of a failing public radio station, I believe in like Seattle or like the Pacific Northwest at least, start this podcast or radio show where they pretend to be exes and they talk about like relationship issues and stuff like that. I really liked the first like 2/3 of this, but the ending like really fell flat for me. And again, my favorite aspect of this was like the news stuff because I used to work in news and I just found that delightful, but otherwise eh. Next up, we have a couple books that I'm getting rid of because I've replaced them with like a nicer edition. So first up is Margaret Atwood's Alias Grace. This is like a historical fiction or historical crime drama maybe that focuses on this woman named Grace who may or may not have killed her employer and her employer's mistress. It's like an unreliable narrator sort of scenario where she's telling her story to, I think he's like a therapist or something, or like a psychiatrist who's trying to determine whether or not she's insane and therefore sort of liable for the murders if she did actually commit them. I really love this story. There's also a really excellent Netflix adaptation. I highly recommend checking that out if you're at all interested. I held on to this for a really long time, but I recently found a first edition hardcover edition at a used bookstore for like $5. I could not believe my luck. So I grabbed that one, and I'm going to be selling this one back to my local used bookstore. This is a really, like, slept on Margaret Atwood book, by the way. Like, if you've read Handmaid's Tale and liked it, you should definitely pick this up. Very different vibes, because, again, it's, like, a historical fiction. But it does deal a lot with, like, a woman's agency in this time. I think it's, like, 19th century Canada. And it's so good. I also recently upgraded my edition of Spinning Silver. This is the Book of the Month edition. Book of the Month editions are cheap because they're not well made. The binding on this one actually cracked as I was reading it, and I was really upset about that. And I've been holding on to it for a really long time, waiting to find a used copy or a bargain copy of the hardcover that is also, like, it's shorter in the original sort of edition. And I also have, actually it's behind me, I think. Yeah, so on my shelf right here, I have Spinning Silver and Uprooted, and for the longest time I had this taller version, and then, like, Uprooted came up to here, and that really bothered me as well. So now they match, so I'm going to be passing this one along. I don't dislike Book of the Month, but as I've started kind of collecting books more, I'm trying to upgrade some of my Book of the Month editions, at least for the books that I care about having, like, a really nice edition of, just because, like, these are never gonna increase in value, and the quality just isn't up to the standard of a traditionally published book. Speaking of Margaret Atwood, I have my old edition of The Handmaid's Tale. I haven't replaced this one yet. I did pick this one up, I think, from thrift books back in college, near, like, 8 or 9 years ago. And it's fine. I like this story. I think this is an important story, but it's also one that I just don't really see myself rereading. Like, I much prefer Alias Grace by this author. And I do need to check out more by Margaret Atwood, but I'm just, like, not attached to this book anymore. Next up is a book that came in a Fairy Loot box, but it wasn't the main Fairy Loot book. And that is An Arrow to the Moon by Emily X.R. Pan. The main reason I'm getting rid of this is because it is a YA retelling of Romeo and Juliet, and I am just sort of over that. The last one I picked up, These Violent Delights, just was such a fail for me, and obviously this isn't going to be, like, exactly the same as that. I'm just, like, not interested in that dynamic in a YA setting, especially anymore. So yeah, I'm going to be passing this one along. It's got cool sprayed edges, so I think, like, if I sell this back to my local bookstore, this will hopefully delight someone to pick up pre-owned, because it is pretty. It's a pretty edition, but I don't have any interest in reading it. Next up is a novella that came out last year, and I bought brand new, which I kind of regret, because brand new hardcover novellas can be kind of expensive considering how short they are. I think I paid like $15 for this, and I'm like, I should have just gotten this from the library. That is Nothing But Blackened Teeth by Cassandra Khaw. This was interesting, but like a lot of the books on this list, I just don't see myself revisiting it. And honestly, the scariest thing about this to me was the cover. Like, I came away from this feeling like I had learned a lot about Japanese folklore, which is great, but it's not like what I was looking for necessarily in this book. Like, I was looking for a Japanese horror story, but it felt more like I was learning about what yokai were, and like I just didn't feel anything for the characters in this book. In a novella, it can be hard to establish characters that the reader cares about, especially this one's like really short. I think it's like 160 pages. Oh, not even, it's 113. So there's not a lot of time to get to know the characters. There's like a weird dynamic happening between them, like relationship wise, and it was just a bunch of dumb people wandering off in a haunted house, and it was weird. I don't know. So I didn't dislike this book. Again, I felt like I came away learning a lot about Japanese folklore and yokai, but it just didn't scare the pants off of me, and that's what I really wanted from this book. Next up is another book that I picked up pre-owned. I can't remember how much I spent on this, but it was not more than like $3 or $4, and that is Thomas Hardy's Tess of the D'Urberville. I actually recently bought the Penguin Clothbound Classic edition of this, and that's why I'm getting rid of this one. I had like a moment there where I wasn't sure if I wanted to collect the Black Spine editions of Penguin Classics or the Clothbound Classics, because I do love the look of these on a shelf, but quality-wise and like how they'll hold up, I decided that the Clothbound Classics was the way to go for me. Plus, I love how colorful they are. Like, I do, like I said, I love the look of a shelf full of these black spines, but the Clothbounds just win it for me. I think they're delightfully gorgeous. So I quickly replaced this one on accident, my bad, but hopefully this will end up in the hands of someone who is very excited about these classic Penguin books. I think they're so gorgeous in like a very understated kind of way. Again, I can't justify collecting both editions, so I'm getting rid of this one. Next up, we have a couple Riley Sager books that I picked up in the bargain bin at Books A Million, and I just don't see myself getting around to these. I've had kind of conflicting feelings about Riley Sager recently. I'm not even really interested in reading his new book. There are books that he's written in the past that I have liked, but I've started to see the formula with his writing, and it's just not doing it for me anymore. And where these are, like, I think his first two books that he put out under his pseudonym, I've heard they're the weakest, and I've just lost interest in them at this point. So that is The Last Time I Lied and Final Girls. This one has to do with, like, the final girl horror movie trope where this girl ended up being the final girl in a situation where a bunch of murders happened. And I think something like the killer's back or something, or I don't know. I get this one kind of confused with the Final Girl Support Group by Grady Hendrix, which I know Riley Sager would be pissed to hear. But yeah, I don't know. I'm not the biggest thriller reader in the first place. Like, it's very much a mood thing for me, and I'll only read like one or two. And because I don't read them that much, I want to be reading ones that I know I'm gonna love. So this one is just a pass for me now. And then Last Time I Lied, I think is like an unreliable narrator situation and something about a cabin at a summer camp where a mass murder thing happened. I don't know much beyond that, but like I said with Final Girls, I'm just not looking to pick up thrillers that I'm not sure that I'll like. So hopefully someone who's really into Riley Sager will be excited to find these pre-owned. Oh, we have another Book of the Month edition that I've recently upgraded. So I had the hardcover of Daisy Jones and the Six from Book of the Month because that was the only way I could find it. And then recently I picked up a pre-owned edition, a first printing actually of the hardcover, which I was so thrilled to find. So I'm passing this one along. Then we have The Mothers by Britt Bennett. This is her debut. I really loved The Vanishing Half, so I was really excited to read the book that was in her backlist. I'm very much looking forward to what she puts out next. I think her writing is gorgeous, but The Mothers fell flat for me plot-wise. Like, it had nothing to do with her writing. It was just that it dealt with a scenario that I absolutely hate. And I was like, halfway through this, I was like, this is gonna be a 5-star read. This is amazing. I love the way that she handled this. It deals with the drama between these young adults and sort of as they get older, how that drama unfolds and continues to affect them throughout their young adulthood. It also deals with abortion, which felt very timely, and I thought she handled it with a lot of nuance. And again, I was like invested. But like I said earlier, something happens. I can't really say what it was without spoiling it, but like, it hurt my soul, and I was so upset about it. It was like something happened to someone that I knew, you know? So, like I said, the writing was great, and the fact that I felt that impacted by this plot point that I hated, I think is saying a lot. I'm never gonna reread this again because it made me so angry. So I'm passing this one along, and hopefully someone who won't hate it as much finds it. And then finally, this was just sitting at the bottom of the thing. It's kind of funny to land on this one. Like I said earlier, I've been collecting the Penguin cloth-bound classics, and sometimes the Amazon listings for those get kind of weird. I've been trying to pick them up used where I can because they can run anywhere from like $25 to $30 if you buy them new. I found an edition of Lady Chatterley's Lover by D.H. Lawrence listed on Amazon with the cloth-bound classics image. I think it was like $5. So I was like, holy crap, like, yeah, I'm gonna snag that. And then I got this in the mail, which, as you can see, is not the cloth-bound classics edition of Lady Chatterley's Lover. So I contacted Amazon. They gave me a refund. So I'm just gonna pass this along. They didn't ask for it back. And I feel like this is gonna end up in the 50-cent bin. It's fine. I'm sure, like, the story is the same, obviously, but where I'm collecting specifically the cloth-bound classics, this was very disappointing to open up in the mail. And that wraps up this unhaul. I feel pretty good about it. It's cathartic to get rid of books sometimes, especially when they're piling up around you and you're feeling a little out of control. It's like, I'm taking control of the situation. So yeah, hopefully some of you guys felt that catharsis with me as you watched, and thank you so much for watching. Please feel free to follow my socials down in the description box below, like this video, subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and as always, have a lovely day. Bye.